The term cover in philately refers to an envelope or some other item of postal stationery that was sent through the postal system. Postal historians and philatelists prize covers for their storytelling. Just by holding a cover, you get a glimpse of life in the past. And while the stamp is a key component on most covers, there's a number of other items that can contribute to the story. A full postmark with location and date, additional cancellations, other hand-stamped messages, a recipient's address, also the sender's address. We can see where this was sent from and where it ended up. We can see the handwriting, the wear and tear of the envelope, additional postmarks laying out its journey through the different postal hubs. And very importantly to the philatelist is the arrangement of stamps and other labels. Now, the contents of a cover are not at all required to make it a collectible item, so you don't need the letter or whatever the package was carrying, but if you do have it, it certainly contributes to the telling of the story. In general, a cover with a stamp on it will be worth more than just the stamp itself, because it's also demonstrating the use of the stamp. Now, what I want to do is go through a number of different types of covers that I've managed to get my hands on. Oh, and speaking of hands, I'm using these clean cotton gloves just so that I don't get any sweat or oils from my hands onto the paper and potentially damage the cover. So let's do this, and the first one I'm going to start off with actually doesn't have a stamp on it. Known as a stampless cover, this particular one was sent from the United States back in 1856, and it shows a hand stamp saying that it was paid for by the sender. Of course, covers sent before the time of stamps will be stampless, and they'll also be known as pre-stamped covers, but in this case, this cover was sent in 1856, 9 years after the United States issues its first postage stamp. And it probably doesn't have a stamp on it because not all US post offices could get a full supply of stamps by that time. Now, I could also claim that this is really a stampless letter, not just a cover, because, well, it opens up to a letter. So you can look over the contents within it, which is pretty cool. Now, moving on, but also stampless, these are military covers. Military covers are one of the most popular types of covers to look out for and collect. Basically, they're sent through postal services provided by armed forces. And the ones associated with wars are part of a unique history, as the cover traveled between fronts, communicating messages of love, hope, family news, or updates on someone's safety. Just imagine if these covers could talk and what they would say. Well, they actually do say a lot. This one is from a German soldier at a training camp in Germany during World War I. This is Field Post. It's a postcard and was sent from the Heuberg training area to Hanover. The year was 1915, and unfortunately I cannot read or make out this handwriting. Now, this one is from a French prisoner of war in Germany, also during World War I. It was sent to an address in Lyon in 1918, and prisoners of war are allowed to send and receive mail. In fact, the Geneva Convention back in 1949 made it mandatory with Article 71 for prisoners to send and receive a minimum of 2 letters and 4 cards each month. This clearly predates that, and they were already doing it here. Keeping to the theme of war, here is an example of a censorship cover. This is during the Boer War in 1901 in South Africa, and the purple triangle is a censorship hand stamp, meaning that the cover was opened and reviewed for any sensitive details that could give away information about the British war efforts. Also note the postage stamp, which is an Oranje Vrystaat or Orange Free State stamp that was continually being used by the British. Even though the British were occupying the area, they were still using the stamp, but with Queen Victoria's initials overprinted on it. This letter was sent almost 1 year before the war actually ended. Moving from the Orange River Colony down to the Cape of Good Hope, this is an example of a pre-stamped cover. It has an imprinted stamp on it, in which this one is embossed with a raised relief. Now, I've seen these cut out and placed in stamp albums, and it's preferred that you cut a square around the imprinted stamp instead of cutting around the border of it. But it's almost always preferred to be not cut out and left on the cover. Now, check this next one out. This one is called a crash cover. It survived a plane crash. Crash covers can be postal stationery recovered from plane wrecks, train wrecks, shipwrecks, you get the point. Other than the obvious damage, there is usually some kind of message as to what happened with this letter or cover and why it may have been delayed in reaching the recipient. And here it is, damaged in plane fire at Warren, Ohio on the 21st of September 1930. The pilot survived the crash and there were no fatalities, but what is tragic is that both stamps did not survive, and it looks like poor old Teddy got his head burnt off. If someone sends something through the mail just for the purposes of creating a collectible item, it's known as a philatelic cover, and there are several types of those as well. The first example that I'll show you of a philatelic cover is this first flight cover. As airmail became more popular and plane routes were being established for frequent flights to take place, philatelists deliberately sent a cover through the mail on this new route. This one was sent on a flight through California in 1947. This image on the left is a cachet, basically a graphic that is placed on the cover to celebrate an event, or in this case, the journey of this first flight. Here's a couple of very interesting first flight covers. This is Zeppelin mail. Throughout the 1930s, Zeppelins were the fastest way to get mail across the Atlantic Ocean. Zeppelins actually carried a lot of mail, and quite a bit of it was philatelic covers for souvenirs. So Zeppelin mail is not rare at all. This one is from the USS Akron on a coast-to-coast flight back in 1932. 1 year later, in 1933, it plunged into the ocean off of New Jersey. This one is from the German Zeppelin Hindenburg. This was from its first flight to the United States in 1936. And 1 year later, in 1937, it had a famous malfunction, also in New Jersey. The most common of all philatelic covers is the first day cover. These feature the stamp on its first day of usage. So around 1910, collectors start to get really excited about the idea of collecting covers that were sent on the first day that a particular stamp was issued. And they of course consist of that stamp as well as a clear postmark indicating the date. Well, that was a bit of a challenge back then because post offices did not give you much warning about the issuing of a new stamp, and also they did not issue stamps nearly as often as they issue them today. So the US Post Office recognized an opportunity and began to announce what the new stamps were going to be months before they were issued. And this gave the collecting community an opportunity to prepare for the upcoming date and get ready to mail out envelopes with the stamp, getting the postmark with the important date stamped. With all this time to prepare, collectors would decorate the envelope with a cachet. These could be printed, drawn, hand-stamped, or even laser printed. Cachet making is considered an art form where any collector can put their own artwork on a cover and give it to their post office to get that postmark. What is interesting is that this became a big money maker for post offices, because now day one of an issue there's a rush to the post office for collectors and for first day cover enthusiasts. Also, a lot of FTC collectors don't put their address on the cover just to keep a cleaner presentation and still get the cover cancelled and postmarked. This is almost like a donation to the post office because you're paying for their stamps, but you're not using the services. The letter doesn't make its way through the mail. This gained serious popularity throughout the 1960s and 1970s, where cachet makers started to show up and produce scores of first day covers. Private businesses putting images on envelopes and charging a hefty price to collectors. The market got flooded with first day covers, so much so that by the early 2000s it had completely slowed down to almost no activity. Now, you can make your own first day cover with your own artwork, get the stamp and the special postmark on the first day of issue. Just look up how to go about doing it through your postal service. Sometimes only a particular city has the special cancellation and it's related to the stamp, so you may have to send it in. Otherwise, you could just go to your local post office and ask them to neatly hand cancel your envelope for you. So how do you go about storing your collection of covers? Well, you could go and get a cover album, such as this one that neatly presents each cover on a separate page. I've heard of some people using old school photo albums. One other method, if you're keeping it loose, is to put it in little plastic sleeves such as these. That you just make sure that the plastic sleeves are chemically inert, that there's no dangerous chemicals in it that could eventually harm the cover. Another way that I prefer is actually stockbook pages. I like to use the Vario system from Lighthouse with clear sheets. And this is for a mix of reasons. By the way, this is not sponsored, but I did reach out to them and made sure that the clear sheets are chemically inert. And it allows me to view the front and back of stamps as well as covers. Of course, I can get different sized pockets. So with my Cape of Good Hope stamps, I can follow that with my Cape of Good Hope covers. It's a safe and awesome way to display my collection. I hope you found this video interesting. Let me know in the comments below if you do collect covers or if you don't collect covers. Maybe you're interested in starting a small cover collection. What are your cover interests? How do you store them? And what other types of covers did I not, well, cover? Thanks for watching as always, and I'll see you next time.